All right, we're doing this study because somebody asked what time is it, and I put this to you because of what we're going to talk about. What is this? We'll talk about that more as we go. But the question of does anybody really know what time it is? The question might be better, does anybody really care? I'm sorry. But really, that's the thing. You know, knowing what time it is, who cares? Well, fewer and fewer Christians and churches and preachers are caring that we're at the end of the end times. So we're going to look at Daniel chapter 9, and I want to bring us up to speed. We're talking about end time issues, and the word most frequently used in Scripture to describe the return of Christ is parousia. And according to Young's Concordance, it occurs 24 times in the New Testament in a variety of connections. The word parousia means to be near or alongside. So that's what Jesus is going to come for us one of these days. And that's what we're studying. In classical Greek, the word parousia was the technical word for the arrival or visit of a king or emperor. And it can be traced from the 2nd century. So that's the reason why Paul and others picked up on it. And so what we're going to look at in Daniel can be seen in this skeleton outline, and we'll look in more detail as we get towards it. But let's look in Daniel. Last week we looked at Daniel chapter 9, verse 1, and we saw that Daniel, coming toward the end of the, really his life and the end of the Israel being in captivity, was reading in the prophet Jeremiah. And he found out that it was going to be 70 years that they were going to be in exile. And he begins to get excited because it has now been almost 70 years. And he actually tries to mobilize Israel to begin to get ready to go back. And sadly, many were not interested in going back. And as he's praying about this, and so his spidey sense is tingling in the back of his neck, and he's getting this sense that prophecy's unfolding right in front of his eyes. And it drives him to his knees and he begins to pray. While he's praying, the angel Gabriel comes and interrupts him. How would you take it if Gabriel was interrupting your prayer time? Would you say, could you wait just a little bit? Probably not the best response. And Daniel does not do that. And Gabriel shows that he's going to show him so much more than he could ever have thought about. And so while he was praying in verse 21, Gabriel came to him. And verse 24 begins the most amazing and precise and just pregnant-filled truth about what time is it in the Bible. Verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. So previously, he's had things revealed to him about the Gentiles. And when he writes about this in the earlier chapters, chapter 2 and all of that, about the statue and the Gentile world dominion, he writes it in Aramaic, the language more understood by the Gentiles. But now when he comes to this, he writes it in Hebrew, because this is about God's people. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. That's always a reference to Jerusalem. And here's what's going to happen. To finish transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness. Not done yet. To seal up the vision and prophecy, and more, to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. And the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Cut off. That word cut off there was first used, and any Jew would have immediately picked up on this. Cut off was first used when God cut off the world in the flood. So it's so that would have instantly be a thing that would have come to a Jew's mind. So God is doing this kind of a huge thing. And therefore shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. That's interesting. There is no sanctuary when Daniel writes this. It's gone. What's that tell you? That there's going to be a sanctuary rebuilt. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. So that ought to take you to the book of Revelation, where Israel goes down to Petra, and a flood comes after them. Yeah. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. And he shall, that is the Antichrist, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for a week. That's actually the next prophetic thing that anybody watching prophecy is looking for. And it looks like the nations, the United Nations, and the United States, the President of the United States, are going to try to force a contractual relationship on Israel. This could be it. I don't know. But it's going to be a covenant for a week. And a week in this context, it's heptads, it's sevens. And the context tells you what it is, and so it's going to be for a week or 7 years. And in the middle of that 7-year period, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Again, there's no sacrifice going on when Daniel writes this. But there will be when there's a rebuilt sanctuary. And the Antichrist is going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the end, the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So the abomination that makes desolate, or the abomination of desolation that you've probably heard about all your life. That's a famous thing in prophecy, the abomination of desolation. We know what this is from other places in the Scripture. The Antichrist, we've been studying it for weeks now in 2 Thessalonians. He's going to set up his image in the temple. I mean, that's the worst. Antiochus Epiphanes, think Hanukkah, Antiochus Epiphanes, back in the historical day, slaughtered pigs in the temple, right? And so that's the most abominable thing he could think to do. Well, the Antichrist is going to take that a step further, not sacrifice a sow, but he's going to set up his image and make the world see him as God. But there has to be a temple for that to happen. So he's going to make that contract, and in the middle of it, he's going to break it in the worst possible way. So that's what we're looking at, and it's so precise. So Israel's captivity begins, so Israel taken out of the land begins a period of time that is known as the times of the Gentiles. Jesus referred to it in Luke 21:24. And then shall fall the edge of the sword. Now he's talking about the tribulation period. He's telling the disciples, here's what's coming. And it's like what has been. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. Jerusalem trodden down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So that's the 7-year tribulation. When that is fulfilled, God takes the Gentiles out of the picture, and they're no longer going to have world power. Romans 11:25, Paul referred to it. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. Here's the mystery, that blindness in part is happened to Israel. That's where they are right now. They're in blindness until the fullness of the Gentiles is come in. So that's a precise period of time that God has determined. So this statue we began to look at last week, and we looked at the whole thing, and we got down to the toes, and I told you I would tell you about the toes, and I promise I will. But we need to think about this statue a bit further. The reason I put this out here is because what is this? So let's go to Daniel chapter 2 and verse 36 and read about it. This is the dream. So Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Daniel was able to interpret it. And the king, when he revealed, he said, yeah, that's the dream. That's it. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation there before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, first in order of things. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand. He hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art the head of gold. So he's going to reveal this statue, and the head is gold, and that's Nebuchadnezzar. But there's more to the statue because time goes on. But thou art the head of gold. So what does Nebuchadnezzar do after this? He builds a statue and makes it completely out of gold. Well, the statue wasn't all gold. By the way, that picture I showed you, that robot, what is that? What's that made of? Verse 39, and after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall rule over all the earth, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these things, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so this last kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, underline this in your Bibles. It's no longer iron, it's no longer clay, it's a they. Got to get your proper pronouns right on things, or you'll get in trouble. And they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Now that's absolutely one of the most fascinating things in the Bible. They, iron and clay, shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in those days, in the days of these kings, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Forasmuch as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands. Okay, now explain that to me. That can mean nothing less than Jesus Christ. Without hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, and the God of heaven shall make known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. What is this? What do you make a robot out of? Gold and silver and brass and iron. And you add AI to that, and you have the seed of men mixed with this statue of metal. Okay, now process what I just told you. Way back in Nebuchadnezzar's day, God revealed all of these kingdoms that were going to be part of, if not the major metals used in an android, a robot today. Do you see it? There's no new thing that God needs to get up to speed on. He thought of all this before the world was founded.
God never needs to get up to speed on anything.
No. There is gold and silver in the world. Think about this. Don't reverse engineer it. We can look and we can see that there is gold and silver and bronze and iron in the world. Not just one. God could have made a world where there was just one metal, but he made these metals so that he could put this prophecy forth and we would be able to understand the times of the Gentiles. This statue is Gentile world rule that began with Nebuchadnezzar and continues to this day. They are to this day trotting down Jerusalem. But one of these days when the tribulation begins, at the end of that, God's going to kick everybody out that's not on board with the plan. What will help you with that is Rome never went out of existence. It just kind of faded into the background, and it's right there under the surface. And it's waiting for the day when those toes will be mingled, iron mingled with the seed of men. AI, transhumanism. You know what the transhumanism goal is? I mean, you go out to Silicon Valley, and all those people out there are working feverishly to be able to upload their brain, digitize it, so that they can live forever. And where would you want to do that? Stuck in one spot in a hard drive, or in a robot where you could travel the universe, go to Mars? That's what they're thinking. You know about Neuralink. Elon Musk has been working for some time now and has now accomplished it. Neuralink is an implanted chip in a man's brain, and the first one has now, he called it recovered fully. That sounds interesting. That man has recovered fully and is able to move a cursor on the screen with his mind. Okay? They're just beginning it, but their goal is to interface, to cause the seed of men and the robot to become one. That's their goal. Whether they ever reach it or not, that's what they're working on, and they have to some extent accomplished that. As God said to himself in the conversation at the Tower of Babel, there is nothing they won't think to try to do. So my point is, we think of the head of gold and so on and so forth. Well, that's just metals, and it just makes a picturesque thing. No, all of those metals are used, and think about this. There has never been a generation that would be able to see what I just told you. This statue represents an android body made out of these metals. There's never been a generation. They've all had to wonder what the seed of men. What is that? How's that going to play out? What's that going to look like? We now know. Artificial intelligence, robotics. Process that. It's really quite amazing. So there's the statue. And so all of this is history right up until the two legs just kind of put on hold. That's what happened to Rome. They were split into two different kingdoms, if you will, or two different capitals, east and west. And the feet are being formed right before our eyes. Transhumanism, AI, and robotics. You can already have a conversation with this thing. Now, how they take this to the next level with genetics, I don't know. But watch. Keep your eyes peeled. It's going to be interesting to watch. So, what is this? Man or machine? It's both. That's the goal. That's what God said they're going to do. The seed of men are going to try to mingle, but they won't cleave together because iron and clay won't cleave together. I mean, you could form it, but how long will it last? You know, it'll fall apart. Interesting passage, and we're not anywhere near done, but time is upon us. 1 Samuel 13:19. Talking about technology. Now there was no smith, that's not the family smith, that's metal workers. There was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords and spears. But all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man his share, his coulter, his axe, his mattock. Yet they had a file for the mattocks and for the coulters and for the forks and for the axes to sharpen the goads. So it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, but Saul and Jonathan had an iron spear and sword. Now, technology. The Philistines kept the Israelites suppressed by keeping them from technology, the iron. They had the iron where they were able to make a file for which they could sharpen the stuff. So Israel had to come to them to sharpen their plows and their axes and all of that. Now, I put this to you not only because it's just interesting, nobody ever even notices this passage about technology, but this technology shows how any technology that comes along will allow that group of people to prevail. So Vladimir Putin just told Tucker, I believe it was, that he was asked about AI. And he said, whichever nation is able to dominate in AI, whoever reaches that goal will rule the world. He's right. He's absolutely right. The reason, have you ever tried to do anything to make yourself secure online? So no, it's not. But most people think if I use a VPN, if I use secret browsing, so I just became privy in the last week to some podcasts about technology that kind of shook me to the shivers. They know, how many of you surf the web? You would not believe what a dossier and a file they have on you. To the extent where they've actually said, the transhumanists and the politicians that want to go this direction, they say that we're not far from not needing to have an election because they already know how you're going to vote. And they're right. I'll bet they know how they know how I'm going to vote by the stuff I've said on Facebook and the things I've searched for in Google. Right. They know how Doug Bradley's going to vote. They know those who would be swing votes that they might be able to influence. You can't hide. This is all going to be great drama until the wrong person's in charge of it.
And he's coming.
So we'll have to leave it there until next week, and there's much more to come about this time frame.